So, in patch 1.04 for Elden Ring, we had a lot of changes, the majority of them buffs, a lot of them being spells and incantations, but also some weapon skills. When it comes to nerfs, there were a few. The standout one was probably Swarm of Flies, however that is still quite powerful, and with the buffs they did, there is one weapon that stands out in a bleed build, and just in general the bleed builds are still very overpowered. That is not a complaint in any way, shape or form. It's more of a don't just jump to strength builds because the colossal weapons got buffed. The bleed builds, faith, intelligence, all them builds are still very viable. It's just because of how much the colossal weapons were buffed, I know a lot of people will switch over to strength builds. So we are going to take a look at a bleed build in this video, and just quickly before we do get into it, if you're not currently subbed to the channel, make sure you do sub, turn notifications on. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, all support is greatly appreciated, and if you want to support me further as a creator, then check out the links in the description, and let's get into it. So starting off, it's not a proper sort of build video, this is more like a bleed builds are still viable, this is a very brief description of what I'm running, and then we'll check out the build, just so that you can see against different enemy types in the game how powerful this stuff still is. So I'm running the Bandit's Curved Sword, Blood Affinity, Seppuku. I've then got the Scavenger's Curved Sword, Occult Affinity with Seppuku as well. Mohgywn Sacred Spear, big buff on that. They increased the cast speed of Blood Boon Ritual, which was already incredibly powerful. So we'll take a look at that as well. There was a nerf to the Dragon Communion Seal. I think they just lowered the incantation scaling, so like incantations don't scale anywhere near as much based off this seal. However, if you're running things like Flame Grant Me Strength, Golden Vow, they never had a scaling buff in the first place, because they are based on increasing your attack power, your defense and things like that, based on a percentage, so there was nothing you could do to scale them to make them even better. Then with the armour, I've got Raptor's Black Feathers, everything else is optional for any sort of build in the game really, unless you want to run something like the White Mask if you have that, to benefit your blood loss build up. Also the Silver Tier Mask will increase your Arcane by 8. Then Shard of Alexander, because skills do come into a build like this. If you're running Mohgywn Sacred Spear, Blood Boon Ritual will get the benefit of the Shard of Alexander. Claw Talisman, it goes alongside the Raptor's Black Feathers. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, that's for blood loss, increasing your attack power. That will stack with the White Mask if you have it. And then I run the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia because successive attacks, if you're running katanas, if you're running curved swords, you're going to get a big benefit from this talisman due to the attacks being so quick. And then I've got the Dex Not Crystal tier because there isn't one for Arcane. And I've also got the Flame Shroud and Crack tier because if you take a look at Mohgywn Sacred Spear, there is fire-based damage in this weapon. So as I said, we are running Golden Vow and we are running Flame Grant Me Strength. And if I proc them both, Flame Grant Me Strength isn't going to do much besides for the physical attacks with these weapons. So if we take a look at the curved swords, always do your offhand one first. And if we just come along and we attack these enemies, that's 2,000 damage. There's 1,800 there. 1,190, not sure why. And obviously this is without any of the jump attacks involved. So if I jump at this guy, 1,500 there. Another 840. 2246. So you get the picture. The curved swords are still really good. Jump attacks are going to deal a lot of damage. With the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, the attacks are quick, so you're going to get successive attacks faster. You're going to build up the damage, and bleed builds are still really powerful. But if we take a look at the Mohgywn Sacred Spear, we proc Golden Vow, and then we use Flame Grant Me Strength. If we go and stand in the middle of some of these enemies, and we use the skill from this, because they increase the cast speed, look at the damage you are dealing to everything around you, and just how fast they actually die. So if we come down here to these ones, and get absolutely ruined. So anything that comes in your path is going to get destroyed. And then you can also get a very decent amount of damage off the weapon itself. I know it's nowhere near as high as curved swords, but you kind of put that buff on it and you deal the fire damage, bleed damage. It's a really, really good weapon that's been made even better with 1.04. So if we now have a look at Mountaintops of the Giants, obviously we're not going to get as much damage, you can't really proc blood loss on this guy. But if we do use Golden Veil, not even going to use the flask, I didn't use it at the Palace Approach Ledge Road either. But if we just proc the stuff on this build, and is what you typically have to do with a bleed build anyway. So if we come over and we just do jumping attacks on this guy, you'll see 8,000 damage. Look at how quick you build up the damage on this. And he's already dead. And that's with some things in a bleed build being nerfed, but it goes to show that they weren't actually nerfed in general, it was just a couple of things. And I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't make that much sense. I know Swarm of Flies was really, really powerful, but the Dragon Communion Seal, it wasn't like that overpowered. And not only that, the Rivers of Blood has been a standout weapon for a lot of people to use. And even though they did change a couple of things around, it hasn't actually lost like that much of its attack power. Like, it doesn't feel that much weaker to use as a weapon in a bleed build. So what I'm going to do is come over to this guy. I'm going to use Blood Boon Ritual, even though you can't really proc blood loss on this enemy. But if I use the flask and absolutely everything and just buff the build up, so you'll see there, it's not amazing, but to get 6k damage when he doesn't take blood loss, that's pretty good for a weapon just by itself. And then if he leaves me alone, look at that, 2,000 and then 1,700. The damage is quite nice from this weapon. And not only that, we can get ourselves a crit with it. 12,000 for a crit is not bad. So if any of you at the moment are steering clear of strength builds, if you've been running Arcane for a long time, just know that there's not that much of a difference. You can still get a lot of power out of the builds, especially if you are running the curved swords. The reason I've mixed the two together is because I wanted to put Occult on one of them just to build up the physical attack power, and the Scavenger's curved sword comes with a blood loss build up by default, so I can have blood on one, Occult on the other. And then with the Mohgywn Sacred Spear, there were a few people using it beforehand, but now it's had its cast speed increased. You can get that power off quickly, or at least a lot quicker than you could before the patch, so now it's even better to run. So that was a look at some bleed builds and the fact that they are still incredibly overpowered in Elden Ring after patch 1.04. It's not that strength is going to go to the top of the list and everyone's running strength builds. Pretty much everything in the game is still viable. It's just about having the right build for it. But what we're going to do is leave that video there. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it.